Bring on the dancing girls and put the champagne on ice. We're betting sports, cashing tickets, and that is always nice. According to the words of my favorite philosopher of all time, the late, great Bon Scott, we're heading in to Sin City, and we're about to win in Sin City. Welcome to Let's Bet, the show for folks who love betting on sports but hate losing money. I'll show you how to increase your sports betting bankroll by gaining confidence so that ultimately you can have the lifestyle that you deserve. I'm your host, Scott Pritchard, pro bettor, full-time, 31 years, founder of PritchardsPicks.com, home of Pritchard's Pick of the Day. Took third place in the Circa Invitational a year ago, was fortunate to be asked back to compete this year, finished a half game out of third place. Golden Nugget contest, last year, sixth place, this year, third place, half game out of second. What's the difference? I'm glad you asked. $15,000. Not happy, but grateful and always humble. I've had some five-star, rock star, superstar guests on this show. What I can do, my guest today can do better. Details to follow. We broadcast live and worldwide each and every Friday from 1 to 1:30 Las Vegas time, on demand on PritchardsPicks.com and on your favorite podcast and video distribution platforms. To reach out to us, I would suggest that you email us at letsbet@PritchardsPicks.com. That's letsbet@PritchardsPicks.com. This week, I mentioned that we've had some five-star, rock star, superstar pro bettors, handicappers to the likes of the legend Jim Feist. A week ago, Jim is going to share with us one of his best bets, added value, no added cost today on Let's Bet. Prior to that, Mike Palm from Circa. Also next week, my guest is Alex White. She won the Last Man Standing contest at Stations a year ago, and she took second place in the Circa Invitational. Dave O'Hara from Hawkeye, pro bettors Chris Zanuck, Chris Piper, who won the Circa Survivor. The Crackman, Bill Krackenberger, has been on this show. Joe D'Amico, and Tony the Great Gordon, who won the Circa Millions. Some real money, boys and girls. He net won over $1 million. But my guest today has done something no one has ever done. He won the SuperBook contest not once but twice, and he did it back to back. Are you kidding me? Please welcome Steve Fezzik. Steve, welcome to the show, but based on this intro, I'm afraid we're out of time.
I'm just humbled by that introduction. What a laundry list of folks. Crackman and I, share information. Alex White, Kenny White in the 80s was, I will say it, the most respected odds maker in the world. I've been in Vegas forever and was fortunate enough to have a great run of contests, especially 2008, 2009, when I won the South Point a couple times also. And Jeff Madsen was a poker player and he won Player of the Year. And they said, what piece of advice would you give once? And I share this. It's like, be humble, take it all in. You just never know when you're running good, that when you're having lots of success, you're probably doing the hard work, doing the right things, but also running really good on top of it.
I like that, because it's one thing to beat the books on a consistent, duplicatable, long-term basis, but to outpick hundreds and or thousands of people, that's a different animal.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I remember going back to the early 2000s, I just moved to Vegas, and I talked about all these sports betting contests. And I said, my EV is over plus 100%. It's better than a poker player playing no limit, which was really good at the time also. And people poo-pooed me. They're like, that's ridiculous. What do you know that would make you better than all of these hardened professionals that have been doing it for years? And I'll answer that. I believed in CLV before CLV was cool. I knew the value because I had been playing advantage parlay cards. And, the bottom line is I would tell people, some pro poker players say, I'm not good enough to fold pocket kings unless I have like 300 big blinds, pre-flop. Even if I'm convinced the guy has aces, I'm putting it in with 100 big blinds because I've been in that situation. And he has jacks. He has ace and five suited every now and then. And just like with these contests, if I can get plus 7.5 and the line's 4.5, I'm putting it on my contest card. I'm not good enough not to play that plus 7.5.
I want to ask you, with your success for decades in contests and also being a pro bettor, an advantage player, if you will, on a consistent long-term basis. Anyone can have success if you've been in the business for 20 minutes, but the fact that you've had proven, documented winning success for decades, what do you enjoy most about what you do?
I just like gambling. I like playing poker. I was a chess player in high school. I was a state runner-up. And just like the idea of, wow, I would go online and play chess, but they didn't pay me, Scott, because I wasn't anywhere close to good enough to be able to like make money doing it. And so to be able to get paid to play a game, whether it be poker, blackjack, sports betting, and I just like, even talking about analytics, Penn State, 4th and goal from the 3, and they kick the field goal, and be able to explain to people that field goal doesn't count as 3 points. It only counts as 1.5. And they're like, how does a field goal count 1.5? And I explain, because if you take a knee and just give the ball to your opponent on the 3-yard line, that's kind of worth about 1.5 points. So it shows how worthless kicking a field goal is when you get inside the 5-yard line.
I think one of the reasons you and I have connected is because I'm a numbers guy, math guy, finance guy. To me, the bottom line is the bottom line. But I want to talk about your background, because you're obviously highly educated. We know this based on how you speak and how the kind of success that you've had in life, not only in sports betting, but in life in general. But because I know you had, I think you majored in statistics at Northwestern.
Yeah. So actually, stats and industrial engineering. And the irony is that like my best friend's a chemical engineer, and he was like so much smarter than I was. And in my family, I'm the dummy. My sister, who's a school teacher, very successful school teacher, but she's like her SAT scores, are styling. She has the same math as me, but her verbal is off the charts good. And my brother is just a genius computer programmer, and my son is so much smarter than I. I'm the dummy in the family. My mom and my dad were both. My mom was a finance professor, and my dad was a chemical engineer. My goodness.
Well, yeah, I know your son is 13 years old, and you said he's a whiz.
He just got a 5 on his AP calculus test.
Outstanding.
13.
Outstanding.
That is unbelievable.
That's so I can tell. Yeah, I can tell you're proud of it, as well you should be, my friend.
And he's a brown belt in karate. So if anyone picks on him, he probably can take care of business.
Remind me not to upset him. So it's nice you have your own personal built-in bodyguard as well.
Well, he's only 5'4" and 113 pounds. So we'll take it with a grain of salt.
Looks can be deceiving, though, right? I want to ask you, because I've learned in life, Steve, that people that are very successful and at the pinnacle of their careers, oftentimes, if we could go back, oftentimes, if you're really good at something that I know I speak personally, that I went from one of the world's worst to one of the world's best, because, life is a great teacher and success leaves clues. I'm a slow learner. The good news is I learn. My question for you is, what do you think are some of the mistakes that you made, or that a lot of people make, as to why most people who ultimately bet on sports lose?
Oh, I love these questions because, one, you prep me a little bit, and two, they're easy. The peanut butter approach is a disaster. What do I mean by the peanut butter approach? That's where you spread yourself too thin. So you have like a cornucopia of different betting events. Let's analyze all of them. Let's bet college basketball. There's only 330 teams. I can cover them all, right? While I'm betting the NFL and college football. So think about it. I'm going to spend 2 minutes a day on the Dayton Flyers and on, the Xavier team and Cincinnati. And I'm going to go through and know everything there is about every single team. 2 minutes a day is not going to be sufficient enough to win, but you're going to be up all night analyzing everything. You would be much better just focusing on 10 teams. Now, here's the hard part. Which 10 teams to focus on? Because if I just focus on Monmouth or a team like that, yes, I'll know more than anyone else, but it might be hard to get all the information. So I think probably focus on a bigger conference where the information is more readily available and really live, breathe, and eat those teams. Probably one conference, a major conference, makes the most sense.
So you feel to departmentalize or to compartmentalize, less is more kind of mentality. I've read that find a niche, get rich. It rhymes, when in essence it's find a niche and get rich. I like first half. I like second half. I mean, sides, totals, money lines. They play the Star Spangled Banner every single day. Ultimately, I have action every single day. But what are your favorite sports to bet?
So NFL, because of the liquidity, there's so much high limits. And you bet games of the year, and there's so many different ways to get at things, and player props. Live betting, college basketball, end game, late in the game would be my number one. If I can bet it with 3 minutes to go, that would be my most profitable historically. Now, a lot of people take the lines off. I'm glad you mentioned the Star Spangled Banner, because now this is interesting, because I can tell you as a story, I hear all the time, Super Bowl, you betting heads or tails? And it just drives me crazy, because it's actually an advantage play that some teams, when they win the coin toss, they almost always defer. Most teams almost always defer, but some teams do take the ball. So think about this. You don't bet heads or tails. You bet which team's going to score first, which team is going to get the first down, which team's going to punt first. Some of these bets can be some of the best bets imaginable in a game, and even some of the bookmakers will say, well, that's 50-50. It's a complete coin toss, and it isn't. And so it drives me crazy when people are just like, oh, we got to bet heads or tails minus $1.10.
I like that. And oftentimes that can be correlated. One of my favorite unfair advantage plays is to bet the first half. It's a small window. Bet the first half once I know who's getting the ball first. We already know in the second half, and the sports books will shade it because you're getting an extra possession. But if you like a team, like let's say you like +3.5, it's +3.5 first half on Tuesday. Now it's 10 minutes before kickoff. It's still +3.5 on the dog, -110. A lot of sharp places will take it down or they'll shade it, but it only takes one place. I always teach, train, and explain, have as many outs as humanly possible. The idea is if you like the +3.5 and you see 30 seconds or you find out online, it's out there per the internet that you're going to get an extra possession. You could be up 3-zip, 7-zip, ultimately with the point spread up 10.5 points with 7 minutes to go and only a quarter and a half to go. And then you correlate that to the first half, the first quarter, winner, steak and lobster dinner.
Yeah, so it helps if you have a buddy attending the game. I tell everybody, like someone says, I was at the game. I was like, why didn't you tell me? Text me who gets the ball. Now, obviously, if the Tennessee Titans and Rudolph are playing, it's probably not going to be very valuable, as opposed to probably a bad example because it was a dead nut under, but if Minnesota's playing Detroit and you know who's going to start with the ball, that's pretty valuable information. Obviously, I'd like to bet the team to score first, but first quarter, very good. And even first half, really good, because the team has a 50-50 chance to get an extra possession, and they're going to score about a little over 3 points per possession. It's worth over 1.5. That's enormous.
What is your sports betting strategy, philosophy, mindset?
Find the biggest edges. Don't waste all your time on something that's not really readily beatable. I'll use an example. The NFL side market on Sunday. I can't beat NFL sides -110. I'm going to go out and say that. So that's a controversial statement. Think about this. I won $1.6 million playing all these contests. And people all the time say, who do you like? Games are kicking off. Who do you like, Fez? It's true. Every now and then I will say, well, I'm going to fade the money that's pouring in on something. But for the most part, I'm like, I don't like anything. I like Mike Evans under. That's who I like. I mean, I'll like a prop bet, or I'll find out, who's getting the ball. But it's past the point where, hey, the market is greater than I. And any insights and models that I'm running, I'm going to get trumped by the information at post more often than not.
That's why guys like you and I and other sharps and wise guys and unfair advantage players tend to bet early, tend to bet often. That's the good news. We can see something before it happens. The bad news is we oftentimes are limited earlier in the week. But to your point, the whole world bets football on football Sunday, and it's a very, very the sports books odds makers have had 7 days to get that side total and money line right. One of the reasons why I like second half betting, because I have a myriad of outs and I pick my spots, spot my picks, less is more, because I have 8 to 10 minutes respectfully to get that number right.
Yeah, it's a great point. It's not like these odds makers are researching all week. Their research is Scott Pritchard is telling them what the right side is. So they can aggregate all these bettors and who they're on to adjust their numbers pursuant to your second half. One tip I would give: I take a little red marker. NFL every Sunday, whoever gets the ball first, I draw a little red marker through that team. So I've got every single team. So I know who's going to get the ball to start the second half. I love the 2 for 0. I don't know why everyone else calls it a 2 for 1.
broadcasters. Al Michaels is saying, it's 2 for dude.
It's a
work on your math skills.
It's like it's not an NBA game. It's a 2 for 0. There's 2 minutes to go, and the team gets the ball in their 25. Example, the Irish. It's totally outplayed, and then there's 2 minutes left. In comes their backup quarterback, and Penn State puts the prevent defense, and the Irish get the 2 for 0. At the end of the first. I got to be careful because I didn't follow that game closely enough. They got the last possession of the first half. I can't recall who started with the ball, but all the time in the NFL, I love betting 2 for 0s to go ahead and take advantage of that with 2 minutes to go first half.
First Super Bowl I went to back in 91, it was the Super Bowl when Whitney Houston knocked it out of the park with the national anthem, but it was the Bills versus the Giants, and the Bills, I believe, were a 7-point favorite. The Giants got the ball under Parcells late in the second quarter. They scored. Coming out of the locker room, they got the ball. They scored again. And from there, they won the game straight up. That was the game Norwood missed the field goal. So, it was touch and go. But the Giants had the game covered, and they ultimately won it. But to your point, yeah, it's 2-0. It's not 2-1. But we're talking to legend Steve Fezzik, the only 2-time back-to-back world champion, the SuperBook contest. I've mentioned on radio and TV most recently with Matt Humans at VEASAN that Cal Ripken, the consecutive game streak will never be done again. I've gone on record, and I'll repeat it right here, right now. I just don't think that Fezzik's record of winning the SuperBook contest back-to-back will ever be broken. We're talking sports betting. We're talking sports betting philosophy. I like to teach, train, and explain on this show. Money management, critically important. I've learned and I've talked about how you ultimately should not risk more than 1%, 2%, 3% of your bankroll in any one game. We also know that you're ultimately betting into a negative. It's a tough racket. It's a dog-eat-dog, cutthroat business that we've signed up for. I like it. I love it. I want some more of it. Like Fezzik, like Feist last week, and Crackman had said, we're all in the same boat. I've learned that sports bettors attracts like. Sports bettors tend to hang out with other sports bettors. Carpenters hang out with other carpenters. Attorneys hang out with other criminals. You're listening to Let's Bet, Scott Pritchard, Steve Fezzik. I want to ask a personal question. Based on your life experience, if you could narrow it down to just one concrete message that you would share with a child, maybe something that you've learned, or let's say 10-year-old Steve Fezzik is sitting right here. Knowing what you know, knowing what you've learned, what would you say to your 10-year-old self?
I would say get really good at one thing, all right? Now, this is controversial because they do studies of people when they go to college, and like the gal that like only dances and she has pictures of ballerinas and nothing else, and that's her whole world, tends to be less happy. So you want to be diverse, but you want to really get good at one thing. Learn to solve every Rubik's Cube, or learn to be a chess master, or, well, Canada master, I guess, in high school, or learn to be good at a certain board game. But do everything, but learn to specialize in one thing and do it well. Become a 180 bowler, be a really good golfer, because by being really good at one thing, I think it sets you up like the amount of discipline and what it would took to get good at that. And then you can translate into your professional life later on and really throw yourself into something and be good at something you like. What was that movie, Ordinary People? The guy is like suicidal and he swims. He's on the swim team, but he doesn't like swimming. Don't do that. Find something you really like doing. He likes being in the choir and singing, so sing.
I really like your answer and the fact that you expanded on that. The first time I asked anyone that question was back a few short years ago. My daughter was 12. We were in Hawaii at the Four Seasons, and we had breakfast with Stephen J. Klubeck, net worth about $120 million. And I asked him what I just asked you, and he looked at my daughter. I said, it's my daughter's 12th birthday. Would you mind sharing a life lesson with her? And consistent to your point, he said, find your passion in life. Be the best at whatever you do and to work hard. And she's lived it. She's doing it. And to your point with your 13-year-old son, I could not be more proud of my daughter, who's now 21 years old. And I would always ask her, hey, what did Klubeck tell you in Hawaii? And I asked her so many times when she was 12, 13, 14, she'd roll her eyes, but she'd always say it. And now today she thanks me for asking him, and I thank her for actually living it. So thank you for sharing.
One more to share. So you're probably at Maui at the Four Seasons?
Yeah.
I'm imagining. So I've stayed there as well. So this is controversial because I'm a guy that will like get my 4 free drinks from the casinos and be a comp wizard. When you go on vacation, I would strongly encourage you, go and stay at the best hotels. Spend 5 days instead of 7 days. Now is not the time to get a value vacation. This is like, we all work really hard. We don't have enough time for our families. Go and have a world-class vacation. Go to Hawaii and really enjoy that week and make it special.
I again commend you for saying that, because I'm a value guy, and I tend to apply in sports betting. I have to get a half point and half the best of it. I'm not going to pay for it. I want it at the minus 110. And so we know the break-even point with sports betting is 52.4%. Sports books only have to be right 47.6% of the time. But I parlay that into everyday life as far as value. But my buddy turned me onto this idea about 5 years ago. And now, once I did it, I'm 6'4". So when I fly internationally, it's a kick in the teeth. Now I do business class, and I'm never going back. And it's the one thing I do for myself when I'm flying internationally. I'll do the business class, even though I'm thinking, or if I go to a Raiders game, I have to sit at the 50-yard line. I go to the Clipper games. I go to Raider games, Dodger games, Diamond Club at Angels games. That's something I do for me. To your point, what's the point of making it in life, having come from extremely humble beginnings, if you can't enjoy the benefits of that?
And if you're single and you're traveling alone, I'm a big believer, stay at Holiday Inn and then just go over to the Wynn. But when you have a family and you have kids, think about how great this is. You're not paying $800 a night for a room. If you've got 3 kids and a wife, now you're all paying $160 a night. I mean, it just makes so much sense.
I want to talk to you because, you're an advantage gambler, an advantage sports bettor, but for the novice gambler who's thinking about having a fair shot, what would you say if you're a novice gambler, something that gives you a fighting chance?
All right. So this is going to be eye-opening to folks because you're going to all take your budget, $500, and you're going to lose it playing your slots. And it's going to be amazing how fast it goes. No more. Now you're going to be able to go and really enjoy yourself. So you're only going to play craps. It's not the best game to play. It's better to learn poker, learn blackjack, learn sports betting, but we only have 20 seconds. So you're going to play craps. You're going to bet $25 and you're going to take your 2 times odds or even 1 times odds. You're not going to play every single time there's a shooter. You're going to be selective. You sit out sometimes and you're going to drink liberally. You're going to have a good time. You're going to play every time you bet $100 or $25 times 4, the house edge on that bet's 1.4%. So think about this. Even if you bet 100 a hand, it's a lot, high roller, you're losing $1.40 every time you put it down. Now, you might win or lose $1,000 on any one session, but over the course of your lifetime, the math is going to come close to that amount. So if you make that wager 20 times, $1.40 times 20, you're going to lose on average $30. You're drinking for free, having a great time. And if you lose your shirt, you go see a host, you cry a river, they buy you a dinner, discretionary comp. You wind up ahead after all the comps, have a great time, and interact with the folks, as opposed to sitting alone at a slot table, losing $500 at a slot machine, losing $500 in an hour and feeling like a dummy.
I like what you said. I stay in my lane. I've been here for 32 years, and I bet on sports. That's all that I do. I don't do any other forms of gambling. I relay it to, if I go to a heart doctor and I ask him, hey, tell me about yourself. And he says to me, I'm a heart doctor, but I also do landscaping and I cut hair. That's my personal opinion. When I go to my cardiologist and I say, hey, tell me about yourself, he says, I'm a heart doctor. I'm a heart surgeon. It's all that I do. But to your point, an advantage player, an advantage gambler, that gives you a fighting chance. I don't play craps, but years ago when Bogdanovich was the main guy at Stratosphere, I took 3rd in that contest. I loved that contest. It came down to the last week for $100,000. I could take 1st, I could take 3rd. Automatica Grammatica, piece of crap. The guy that would, he's a legend in his own mind. He would make an extra point and jump up and down and carry on.
Polish.
And all he had to do was make, for the division title,
I remember this. This cost me also.
He missed the kick. It was a 39-yarder for the division, and I would have net won 100,000. Instead, I won 20. I hedged the Monday night game, so I netted 40. Don't want to complain over winning $40,000, but at the Stratosphere, I love betting WNBA totals. It's a lame product, but it's a very beatable market. And so I remember years ago, I mean, the league has been around for 27 years, and I don't know if this year they finally made a profit, but imagine being in business and for 27 consecutive years, you lose. And that's where we are with the WNBA. I have 8 season tickets to see the Las Vegas Aces because last year was the first year that they actually sold out, and I'm going to look at selling at least 7, if not 8 of my season tickets, especially when Caitlin Clark comes to town. But my point is I was at the Strat as an advantage player years ago, and the total on a WNBA game was 119. I'm thinking, wow, it's 118 everywhere, and I love the under. So I bet 550 to win 5, knowing it's 50-50 if they would take it or not. They said, no, we don't want it. I said, what about 330? I said, oh, so 330 to win 3. They said, no. I said, well, what's left? They said, $100. So I bet $100. And it moved 2 points from 119 to 117. Yet on the way out, I saw a craps table, and I don't play craps. But to your point, I know that the house's edge might be 51 versus 49%. It's as close to 50-50. It gives you a fair shot, to your point, for a novice gambler. But yet, if I wanted to bet $10,000 on the roll of the dice, they'd say, come on in.
Absolutely, because they know they have the better of, unless you're a dice setter, which is almost impossible to do. And by the way, it'd be remiss not to mention, if you take your 2 times odds, it's 0.6%. So it drops from 1.4 to 0.6%. The finding edges where no one else sees them, like you talk about the Stratosphere. It used to be Stratosphere and the Arizona Charlie's properties were all the same, under the same umbrella. And they had advantage parlay cards, and they had a promotion. So I have an edge playing the parlay cards, and they gave away $5,000 a week. So there was like 6 of us: Frank B., famed advantage player, Bad Cutter, myself, the Midnight Cowboy, and 2 of Frank's friends. We literally, when we went to Arizona Charlie's West, we would get 4,500 of the 5,000. Like every now and then they draw one $500 winner other than us. So like each one of us, we're like, it's a welfare check. We're going in to pick up our $500 each and every week, just spotting something, that no one else was doing. It's a town full of wise guys. Where are all of them? Well, they're making videos and the like, and they don't have time, I guess, to pick up their 500.
Before we get to best bets, I want you to share with our viewers. By the way, the viewers, you spoke, I listened. I've had great guests on this show, but so many people were asking, hey, when are you going to get Fezzik on? Hey, we want to hear from Fezzik. So I know you're slammed. I know you're busy, but I want to thank you for coming in the studio, being live, and sharing.
Well, it's your reputation.
Thoughts.
I mean, I've told like 10 people, hey, I just can't do it, because at some point you don't learn by talking. You learn by listening. And you spend all your time talking, the game's going to pass you by.
I like it. We have 2 ears, 1 mouth. We should concentrate on listening twice as often as we speak. A lot of us have that backwards. Don't ask me how I know. But I want you to share with our viewers what you would say, Steve, are the top 1 to 3 attributes that you must possess to be a consistent, long-term winning player.
I think you got to be good at math, all right? Or you got to be able to understand the basic principles of math. So it's like a poker player. I'll use an example. When a poker player is a flush draw, he doesn't have to have a degree from MIT, all right? But he has to know, hey, I'm going to get there. I've got 9 outs. There's a rule of 4. I multiply by 4. I'm going to make my flush 36%. Boom. All right. You've got some shortcuts with the math. So you need to know, like with all these like same game parlays and the like, you need to know what the true odds should be if you're playing a parlay. How much of a haircut is the sportsbook taking for a possible correlation, and be able to understand that. You need to be able to understand if I'm laying minus 200 and laying minus 300, you got to just be able to do in your head, okay, I risk 100. I'm laying minus 200. That wins 50. Now I got 150, laying minus 300. That wins 50. Boom, the 100 should turn into 200. So a minus 200 and a minus 300 should pay even money on my parlay. You got to just be able to like practice that to the point where you don't have to excel at it, but you got to be competent at it.
We're going to come back with best bets. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Brad Powers, professional handicapper and college football bettor specializing in the college game. And you can find me on Twitter, Brad Powers7, or on my website, bradpowersports.com. But the main purpose here is to talk about my man, Scott Pritchard, who I've had the opportunity to do not one, but two shows with the living legend himself, Scott Pritchard. Love talking with him. He is successful. You need to get his picks, Scott Pritchard picks. And folks, it's all about one thing and one thing only. Let's bet.
Pro Better, Brad Powers, thank you, my man, for the kind words. And we have a mutual friend in Brad Powers because I know you guys are tight. He speaks highly of you and vice versa. But I like and respect Brad because he is the man when it comes to college football. I tend to go day to day, week to week, season to season. But this dude, he's thinking college football in January. And he proved it. He mentioned on my show that he had a game of the year, Ohio State -4 in January against Ohio State 10 months later. Now, fast forward 10 months later, it's 21. Ohio State favored by 21. Now, Michigan won the game straight up and he lost the bet. But again, don't worry about the donkey going blind. Just load the wagon.
Yeah, spot on. So back to don't be the peanut butter approach. Don't spread yourself so thin. Really focus on one thing. Example, 2025. New York Giants. What's their schedule look like? Oh, the last place schedule, they'll be all right. Well, no, because they're going to have to play the 49ers. That's a pretty good last place team. And guess what? The New York Giants have a big disadvantage in their division. You know why? They don't get to play themselves twice. They have to play everybody else twice, and they have to play the AFC West, and they have to play the NFC North. So that's going to be a nightmare strength of schedule. So even though they get a last place schedule, they're going to have one of the hardest schedules out there. It is going to be extremely difficult for the sportsbooks to put a number low enough for the New York Giants in this coming year. Okay, I just sandbagged the number I'm going to get, but it's one game. But you get the idea.
I do get the idea, and what I'm going to say trumps everything that you just said. Brian Dable is our coach.
I actually think Brian Dable's competent. Sometimes you get dealt a bad lot, right? So you get Danny Dimes. I mean, you get Tommy Cutlets. What are you going to do? It's like, I do have a buddy. I want to share this with you, and shows you can learn something from everyone. And he's a professional, full-time job, but he's like, Steve, you're making this way too difficult. Team has a good quarterback. They have a good coach. So they got Harbaugh. They got a good quarterback. Boom, you bet them over. All right. Bad quarterback, bad coach, you bet them under. Literally, and I just finished second in the Westgate season wins contest, and I placed in that contest several times. And if you just follow that strategy, it's amazing how often you wind up, literally picking over 60% NFL season wins without all this EPA and yards per play and all this like double blind, advanced metric crap. Sometimes it's that simple.
I'm telling you, man, less is more. And sometimes the more you know, the less you know. I've been guilty of what you're implying, and that is paralysis by overanalysis, because I don't want to miss anything. And I think it's applicable to everyday life. He with the most information has an advantage in life, but there comes a point to where less is more. Keep it simple, stupid.
New England Patriots, Bill Belichick teams, guess what? They don't have punters that kick the ball into the end zone. They don't have quarterbacks that throw Hail Marys out of bounds. They don't have kick returners that field the ball on the 3-yard line on punts. And they don't have guys jumping offside on field goals. It's like you cumulatively add these up, and then you get a team that's not buttoned up and makes all these mistakes, like the Tennessee Titans. Oh, they have good stats. They should be like close to a 500 team. No, because they do everything wrong if you actually watch the games.
Great input. It's time now for Best Bets. Steve Fezzik, my guest. We have added value, no added cost. Jim Feist texted me earlier with one play, one time. He was my guest a week ago. The guy has been in Vegas for 55 years. What I can do, he can do better. I've been here for 32 years and counting, but it's time now for Best Bets. Steve Fezzik, who do you like? What do you like and why?
I got 3 bets here. So I'm going to go Houston Texans +3. Power rating wise, I make these teams 3 points apart from each other. Game in Houston. So my power ratings, if I give Houston 1 for home field, there's value there. just a point, but it's the all-important 3. Further, I think the whole wildfires, I know the Chargers are out of town. This has to be a distraction for both the LA teams. I would not want to be betting on either one of them with everything that's going on. And also, I do a rule of 3 sometimes, where what I say is, let me move the spread 3 points in each direction. A couple weeks ago, if you said, the Chargers are pick 'em at Houston, I'd be like, that's reasonable. Houston's catching 6 at home against the Chargers. Yep, all in. Shove all the chips. I mean, that would be a ludicrous line. So value Houston +3.
Great. Best bets. Jim Feist, 1 play, 1 time. It's not how many you bet, it's how many you win. He likes under in the Ravens-Steelers game. Again, added value, no added cost. Free best bet, Feist. He likes under. The question is, what number can you get? I know it opened 46.5, and knowing Jim, he probably stole a 47 because, like everyone on my show, he's an advantage player. Right now, it's 43.5 everywhere except South Point. Look at that. I'm even doing the shopping for you.
3 Hall of Fame bookmakers over there.
Chris Andrews, Jimmy, Vinny.
They don't let me bet.
Yeah,
they do not.
So I'm not the only one. They let me bet, but it's a nickel or a dime, and 30% of the time it's rejected. But I still love those guys. They're way better than most.
Hey, no flowers for Baltimore, so they're deep threat. I love Jim, and Jim's a good poker player too, very good. But without that deep threat, 2 tight ends, Mark Andrews isn't going to go for, well, he did last game, but he's not going to go for 50 on a typical play. So probably more matriculate the ball. And Pittsburgh's good at shutting down Lamar typically.
Feist told me to tell you hello. He's a big fan as well. So there's Feist, his best play, or one of his best plays that he's sharing on Let's Bet this week. Under, now I wanted to say under 44 because that's the only 44 here in Las Vegas if you're proactive and you can shop and you have outs in the islands. But everywhere else it's 43.5. Now 44 is a key number, boys and girls. I've talked on this show before that there are 10 ways to get to 37. And 37 to 44 is 7 points, and 7's a push. So you might want to keep that in mind. I would feel terrible if it falls 44 and you bet under 43.5. So do your own due diligence. I've got 1 play, 1 time, and consistent with Steve Fezzik's point, we talked before the show. I told him we both were on the same side. Houston, home team dog, +3. I respect the Chargers, but if you look at their strength of victory, they've won games, but I've not been impressed with who they've beaten. I was at the Raider game last weekend. The first half of the game was a coin toss, respectfully, before the Chargers opened things up. But the fact is, the Chargers were on the road last week. They're on the road this week. Their strength of victory, not impressed. I like Harbaugh, but he's not a player. He's not in the game. And I think you've got the Houston Texans at home, +3. I like it. But I'm not going to piggyback off Fezzik's play, so I've got my own play. I'm going with the Minnesota Vikings cheap money line Monday night, Glendale, Arizona, at Arizona against the Rams. I believe they're a bit overhyped, a bit overrated. Congrats on winning your division. But here's my point. You're talking about the Minnesota Vikings. They picked a bad time to play a bad game. I was on the Vikings +3, 10-9, second half, looking good, feeling good. There were just a mirage of questionable decision-making, play calling. Darnold definitely had the worst game of the season. No excuses. I give the Lions credit. But when you have a good team, and the operative word here is good, if the Carolina Panthers have a bad game, no one cares. They're not going to respond because they are who they are. But the Vikings, with the 14-win season, they have a chip on their shoulder. They have a bad taste in their mouth. They're a good team. They can run. They can pass. They play very good defense. They are the better team. And there's been a move on this game. I don't really like laying points in the NFL. I would go with the cheap money line. The Minnesota Vikings to beat not the St. Louis Rams. You almost got me there. The Los Angeles Rams. So my play, Minnesota. Steve Fezzik, 1.5 plus net wins and contest winnings. My guest on Let's Bet this week. How can people find you?
Yeah, Twitter at Fezzik Sports. I guess I should say X. And pregame.com is where I sell picks. There's people pretending to be me. If they have my name on their website, that's not me. I did want to mention thoughts and prayers to everyone in LA with the wildfires. We were both fading the LA teams, and those distractions certainly are going to be difficult, for those teams. I did want to give a couple bonus prop bets. I'm not normally a prop guy, but this time of year, hey, this whole Mike Evans thing, kudos to him getting that. How cool was that? The $2 million bonus or whatever he got and getting to the 1,000-yard streak. But Baker has been feeding him the ball nonstop. But quietly, the number 2 wide receiver, McMillan, has been going 50-plus week after week after week, despite all the focus being Mike Evans. So I'm going McMillan over 52.5, and I'm going Evans under 75.5.
I want to thank you for taking the time out to be on the show. Again, my viewers spoke. I listened. You're slammed. You do a lot of podcasts, a lot of radio, a lot of TV. Plus, you have a family. Plus, you do this on a full-time basis. So thank you for taking the time. You knocked it out of the park.
Thank you to all the listeners that spent their time with us, and one life as a parent. If you have a young child, race your son or daughter every day. You will never forget the first day that they beat you.
I like that. Steve Fezzik, back-to-back, 2-time winner. The SuperBook contest has net won well over $1.5 million in contest winnings and counting. To reach out to us, email us at letsbet@pritchardspicks.com. That's letsbet@pritchardspicks.com. Next week, my guest, Alex White. She won the Last Man Standing contest at the stations a year ago, and this year she took second place in the Circa Invitational. She'll be my guest next week. For Steve Fezzik, my name is Scott Pritchard. Until next week, see the cashier.